This week, the World Health Organization said that gaming addiction should be considered a disorder, which of course led to a variety of breakfast TV shows going into complete gaming hysterics. So what should you be hysteric about, and what should you just be chill about, and what should you actually consider about yourself and your gaming addiction, maybe? Let's discuss. We have a panel this week. Olivia Rosenman is an audio producer and an expert in all things technological, and Daniel Van Boom is the Asian editor with a lovely smile for the technology website CNET. So exactly what has happened?
Two things. To preemptively shield the World Health Organization, they kind of admitted the main criticism that's been mounted against them is that there's not enough data to really classify this as a true disorder. And they kind of said that. Their argument was, if we classify this as a disorder, that will allow better data and more data to build around it.
Yeah.
So that doesn't stop certain programs and certain people from calling it an epidemic and calling it digital heroin and all that. But so the World Health...
Come on, get with the times. Digital ice. Come on. Come on.
That's a great point to make. And I just did a bit of research about the history of the WHO's ICD, the International Classification of Disease. So what it is basically a system of classifying all the world's diseases. And they do it with like short 6-letter and number codes that then are spread throughout the world, which means that they can have a standard, universally understandable set of data points and can collate disease and morbidity and all that kind of data from around the world. So I think that is quite a cool thing to have. And basically all they were really doing was putting a language around this, as you said, Daniel, to be able to get more data. So I do think the media went a bit crazy.
Yeah,
with
and
this one.
I remember about 4 years ago, actually, the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual of Mental Health Disorders, basically the Bible for clinical psychologists. They added as an addendum, I think, mobile phone addiction and overuse of technology to that. And they did it for very similar reasons, which is that if we don't add it in now, we won't be able to properly research it, because if we just stick our head in the sand, we won't know, we won't be able to collect data in order to work out whether it is or it isn't a problem. The problem is, though, it's like the moment it gets added into any context, you get certain breakfast shows doing a thing.
I think it was the American Psychiatric Association that kind of criticized them for saying you kind of just jump here on the bandwagon as everyone kind of freaks out about Fortnite.
Yeah, so we should say Fortnite, very popular game for people that have never played it before. What's it like?
Up until recently, online games, Call of Duties and such, they've been 4v4, like teams of 4 against 4 or 5 against 5 or 6 against 6. Sometimes 10 against 10 if you want to get crazy. In the last 2 years, a type of game called Battle Royale has gotten popular, which basically sees literally 100 people getting shot out of a parachute into a large map, and you just fight to the death, like last man standing. It is very popular.
Yes.
It is very, very popular. I kind of sympathize with the World Health Organization because there was a story in South Korea a few years ago it was tragically black comedy, I guess, because they were playing a child raising simulator to the extent, like, for 48 hours straight, and their actual toddler died.
Yeah.
And
it's a horrifying story,
yeah. So obviously it's real. The question is, where do you draw the line?
It's also just funny that people can't sort of make that leap, because we're well aware, especially in Australia, and understand the addictiveness of poker machine gaming, right? Which is like a very similar behaviour, sort of
there's certainly a lot of
behaviour.
overlap in terms of like where the dopamine hit comes from and things like that.
Yeah. I find the whole hysteria over this being a little bit unwarranted.
There is clearly something that services our impulses. At what point can we have like a rational conversation about when it becomes healthy, when it becomes unhealthy?
What the WHO making this classification means is that now we can now approach this disorder with a clinical approach rather than a criminological approach. That's sort of one of the big things that happens when you classify something as a health issue, a mental health issue. So we've seen the same with drugs. If anything, it means that for people who are suffering, and the WHO did come out and say, look, this is a very, very, very small percentage of people who are actually experiencing these sort of addictive symptoms. But it means that we can actually develop effective treatment to help people because, as you said, there is obviously some sort of addictive dopamine thing going on that is happening. So I think it's a good thing.
For sure. The criteria that they use, there was 3 parts to that criteria. There was lack of control over your gaming sessions, which is kind of like, just 1 more hour, man, you know. Then there was a prioritization of gaming over everything else in your life. So if you're late to work because you're gaming or you're not working out or whatever.
Not going to the toilet.
Why would you even bring up that idea?
That was a real thing in the World of Warcraft days.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a South Park episode about it, so you know it's real. The above symptoms need to be present for more than a year without the person doing anything about it. You get the impression that somewhere out there, someone is going to use this as like a battering stick against gaming, but well, like I said, they were probably going to do that anyway, right?
We actually need to talk about the addiction to screens and technology that is like not necessarily gaming, because it feels like gaming might just be sort of part of a bigger problem. I mean, they're kind of different, but they're kind of the same, and we're not talking about the tech problem.
Things like Facebook, things like Twitter wouldn't be as successful as they are if they didn't service us something. It wouldn't be the first thing you check in the morning if it wasn't servicing something.
I completely agree. And so both Apple and Google, their new operating systems come out in September. And a big feature of both of them is you're able to set a limit on how much you use certain apps, which I am absolutely a child that needs to be told, no, get off Twitter.
So there's also a great group in the States called Humane Tech, and they sort of publish a whole bunch of helpful information to help you stop that compulsion to pick up and check your phone. And they say things like, you can actually turn your whole phone screen into black and white. You can take off all notifications. The reason that your Facebook notification is in red there is because red is a color that draws your attention, that makes you think urgency. Yeah, absolutely. So there's some cool stuff on their website to try out if you're worried.
All right, there is lots more of this in the podcast of Download This Show. We're also going to be interviewing a robot, which you can hear on the podcast. We'll see you there. Bye, guys.